Hey Year 7s, today we're going to start in with angle theory, starting with a rule that I hope you're already very familiar with from last year, but even if you're not, you should be by the end of this lesson. So let's get started talking about angles on a straight line. Now it usually takes two lines to form an angle like I've got here. I've got one line that goes across here, and I've got another line that joins to it at this point here, which is where my angle is. That's where I've lined up my protractor so that the center of the protractor is right where the two lines meet, and one side of my protractor lined up so that 0 is on one of the lines, and that way I can read from 0 opening up that this angle is approximately 26 degrees. All right, so that's the angle between two lines. The angle on a straight line is very difficult to measure because I could line my protractor up at the end of the line. It's lined up on 0, but when I try to measure how big it is, I have nowhere to stop because that line never stops. I don't have a second line to measure to. So what we're actually talking about when we talk about angles on a straight line is we're talking angles at a specific single point on that straight line. And there's a line that goes right through that point, and it's a straight line. So I can take my protractor and I'll line the center of my protractor up right on that point, and the protractor is lined up on 0, measuring from 0 all the way around until I see that line again. I'll see that that's 180 degrees. Really, we can think about this as being two straight lines that meet at that single point, but those two lines, when you draw them together, makes a straight line. That's 180 degrees. Okay, we're not going to be using a protractor for this today, although you should be very familiar with your protractor, so I hope that you did understand that explanation just there. But today, we're just going to use the rule that angles at a specific point on a straight line makes 180 degrees, and we're going to work that out algebraically. So here I've got two angles. I've got angle X, and I've got angle 98, and they meet at this one point on a straight line. The straight line is called AB because it starts at A and goes through that point straight through to B. Okay? Now, we could say that since these two angles make a straight line, they're called supplementary angles. If ever you're asked, what is the supplementary angle to 98? You're actually being asked, what is the angle that we need to add to 98 to make 180? Okay? If I were to draw another angle on this line AB, so I've drawn another angle over here at the point B, this 140 degrees is not a supplementary angle to these two angles over here because it's not at the same point on that straight line. That angle doesn't get added to the other angles to make a straight line. So that's really got absolutely nothing to do with the angles on a straight line rule. So let's get rid of that. Right, so looking at our two supplementary angles here, knowing that they're supplementary angles, we can write an equation. And that's what we need to focus on this lesson. I want you to focus on setting up equations based on the rule and solving them algebraically. It's way more important that you understand the methods than actually getting the answer right. Because X may be one thing today, it will be something different tomorrow. It doesn't matter what X is. What matters is that you know how to find X. Okay, so let's start with writing our equation. And the only rule we're going to look at today is the straight line rule. So I'm labeling it with how I found this equation. And I always want you to start by doing that. But today it'll always be the straight line rule. And another day, we're going to learn other rules, and you're going to have to really specify, did you use the straight line rule? Did you use the fact that it's a full turn, that it's a triangle, and so on. So starting with the right methods here, the rule, it's a straight line, which means that X plus 98 makes 180 degrees. Right. Now, using algebraic methods, we are going to rearrange this equation. Don't just jump straight to the answer. Make sure you're showing you're working to explain yourself. Even if you know what the answer is, again, the answer is not as important as the method. So to rearrange this equation, to find out the value of the variable is a letter, and we call it a variable because its value may vary. Today, X is one thing, tomorrow it's another. It varies depending on the situation. So I want to get the letter on its own. That means I need to move the number 98 to the other side. And since the 98 is added on this side, when we take it to the other side, we do the opposite, we subtract. But what's really important here is that we keep the order. The 180 degrees was on the right-hand side first. The 98 comes after it, so the 98 can't jump in front of it. in the order of terms. We're doing 180 minus 98, which is not the same thing as 98 minus 180. Really, really important, especially as you're at home and I can't see you're working, that you're working the right way. Right, so x is equal to 180 minus 98, which means x must be equal to 82. Okay, let's try another example. Here, example 2, we are working algebraically. We have to set up an equation and rearrange algebraically to solve it, especially with a question like this, where I haven't given you any values. All I've told you is that this angle, x, is 1/3 the size of this angle, 3x, and this is 1/2 of this angle here, which is 2x. When I have a variable like x more than once in the same question, it represents the same value. And that's important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to solve this. We would have 3 different numbers. We don't know what those numbers are. We know that they make a straight line, so they add to 180, but we can't solve. But using the same letter, we can write an equation, and we can simplify that equation and solve it algebraically, no problems. Okay, so the angles x, 3x, and 2x are 3 angles at the same one point on straight line AB. Again, I've marked that point for you, and I've shown you that from A to B, it may look like a straight line, but it could possibly be 178 degrees or 179 degrees. It could be a tiny bit smaller, a tiny bit bigger than 180 degrees, but I've told you that this is a straight line AB that is 180 degrees. Okay, so knowing that x, 3x, and 2x form one straight line, we write the equation. Again, the rule is that it's a straight line, so the equation is that these angles will add up to 180. Now, since we have several terms with the same variable, that's the same letter, we can group them together to simplify the equation before we solve. So grouping this together, x, 3x, and 2x, we can simplify that and just say, how many x's is that? And it's not 3, it's not 1, 2, 3. This is 1x plus 3x plus 2x. Together that makes 6 x's. So 6x equals 180, and now I can solve this equation by getting x by itself, which means I need to send 6 to the other side. The 6 here is multiplying, so when I take it to the other side, I'm going to divide. X is equal to 180 divided by 6, and that's 30. Now, done, right? Be careful. Read the question again. Read it carefully. Were we asked to find out what x is, or were we asked to find out what the 3 angles are? It says over here, work out the unknown angles. Not work out the variable, work out the unknown angles, and there are 3 of them. X is 30, so 3x is 3 times 30, and 2x is 2 times 30. So my 3 angles will be 30, 90, and 60. Okay, so always read the question carefully. Even once you're finished, go back and read the question. Make sure you've done exactly what you're supposed to do. Okay? Now, we should be just about ready to get on to the exercise, but remember to follow these steps. First, copy the diagram. You must always copy the diagram. Use a ruler and pencil and keep it nice and neat and label anything that you need to. Then write the rule. For now, the rule is always going to be straight line or angles in a straight line. Then write the equation, and if it's the straight line rule, something equals 180. We're adding up the supplementary angles to make 180 degrees. And then you're going to solve that equation to find the value of the unknown variable. So get the letter by itself, send the numbers over to the other side. Remember, if it was plus, we minus, it was multiplied, we divide. It's the opposite operation to get the letter on its own. And then finally, reread the question to make sure that you are done. Make sure that you have found the variable that you're looking for, or if you needed to, you've worked out the angles that you are looking for. Okay, hopefully you're all clear on what you need to do now. Make sure that you've got good, clear notes before you get started, and let me know if you need any help. Send me a message. Okay, good luck. Bye.